Hi guys, welcome to the Drum Power Music Factory and Music Factory Direct Drum Kit Setup Guide. So today we've got our first drum set to set up together. Your kit might be a little bit different to this one. You might have a full-size kit or a junior drum set, but they all work in exactly the same principle. So let's begin. Let's open it up. Got a range of drums. In this situation, we're setting up a full-size 5-piece drum set. You might have a junior kit in a 4-5-piece. We've got a second box in this scenario with all of our hardware and our snare drums also in that second box. Let's lay everything out. So we've got all of our hardware, all of our stands, our cymbals, and then the 5 drums which we're going to assemble together. There's our skins. So let's begin. First we've got the snare drum. This is identifiable, which you'll see in just a second, with the one with the snare wire underneath. That one's already assembled, so this is easy. But now we've got a bag of rod bolts, and here's our blank rod bolts and our claws for our bass drum. So let's begin. So we're going to start with our floor tom. We've got our drum key. We're going to take off the few retaining rod bolts that hold that hoop on, take the plastic off. Now we're going to get our drum skins out. We're going to put the drum skin on top of the floor tom. Make sure you got that logo in line. That's what I like to do. I think it looks pretty cool. I'm going to put the hoop on top. So in this situation, we're going to open up the rod bolt bag, and in here we've got a bag or a little pocket of petroleum jelly, which acts as a lubricant. You might choose to dip the rod bolt in and then put that through on every rod bolt. In some cases you might not have that enclosed with your drum set. That doesn't matter. Okay, let's begin. So first we have our rod bolt. Get the washer. We put the washer on the rod bolt, and let's put that on finger tight. Screw that in. It goes straight into the insert in the lug. Okay, let's do it again. Got our washer on our rod bolt. Finger tight that one down. Going to repeat that process the whole way around the floor tom in this case, or you're going to do that with all the drums that aren't already pre-assembled. Washer on the rod bolt. Into the lug. Let's go. Time-lapse photography. Okay, let's flip that drum over. So we get our other head. In this case, this one doesn't have a logo on it. Get our hoop, put the hoop back on, line that up. Get our bag of rod bolts, put the washer on each rod bolt again, and let's assemble that drum. You might choose at any time to pause this video just so you can catch up, and we're going to move on to another drum. But again, you might want to fast forward and jump up to another stage after you've assembled all your drums. Okay, let's start with one of our toms. We're going to start with the bottom. Skin on. Put the rod bolt in place. The hoop in place. Got our rod bolt and our washer again. Just going to finger tight everything in place now. Okay, we've done that side. Let's turn it over. Let's look at the top of the drum. So again, like we did before, let's get our skin. Now this time we're going to put a different mounting system on. Your drum kit may have a mount that's fitted directly to the drum, but in this case we've got an isolated mounting system. So what we're going to do is we're going to place it down with the large rubber eyelets placed over the top of the insert, and that'll hold in place. This is an isolated mount, so in this situation we've got these rubber grommets that sit over the top of the insert on top of the lug, and that, as you can see, is going to go through the rubber grommet into the lug. So for now we're just going to sit that in place. We're going to get our skin, just like we did before. I like to line that logo up with the other logo. Looks pretty classy doing it that way. Sit the hoop in place. Got our rod bolts and our washer, and that's going to go straight through the hoop, in through that rubber grommet, into the lug, and passes straight between the isolated mounting system. Once again, your drum set may not have this isolated mounting system, and in the situation where there's a block bolted directly to the drum, don't be concerned. So we're just going to assemble that kit. Let's go. Okay, let's move on to another drum. We're going to repeat exactly the same process here. So we've done the bottom drum head now. We're going to do the tom. Let's line that logo head up. Now, in this situation again, we have the isolated mounting system. That's going to go over where the air hole for the drum is, sitting those rubber grommets in place. Drum hoop over the top. Now we're going to put the rod bolt straight back through as we did before, and goes again between the hoop, through the rubber grommet into the lug. And your drum set may not have this, so don't be concerned. If it's a standard kit or a junior drum set, it's pretty common to not have this sort of mounting system. So we're just going to tension those up just to get enough on the drum where it's holding the head in place, but we're not tuning the drum as of yet. We'll run over that process later. Cool, now we've got a second drum assembled. Let's go. Okay, so now we're going to pull out all of the longer rod bolts, which this time are going to be used for the bass drum. We've got a spare insert. We're going to keep that aside. That's not required. Again, it's just a spare component. So again, same process as before. Going to get the blank rod bolt, put a washer, and in this case with the claws, that's what's going to secure the skin in place on the bass drum. So now we have our bass drum. Let's remove the plastic from that guy. I always like to hold the lugs so you don't put fingerprints all over the covering. It works better for me. So we're going to start with the playing side of the bass drum, and that's kind of seen a little easier when you can see the block essentially closer to the front of the drum, the big silver piece, which is ultimately where our tom arms are going to go into. So now we've got the skin on the playing side of the bass drum, and you'll see on the bass drum hoop there's a little line here where the covering joins. What I like to do is put that at the bottom where you don't see it. Not that it affects the drum in any way if it's in another place, but I just think it looks a little classier having that directly in line with one of the lugs at the bottom of the drum where you can't see it. Okay, so once again we have our blank rod bolt and a washer, and that goes directly through the claw. Here. Now we're going to place that on the side of the drum over the hoop, and that's going to secure the hoop in place. Again, we're just going to finger tighten that one up. So we're going to repeat that process. In this situation we have 8 of them. Your drum set might have 6, it might have 10. Exactly the same process. Okay, so now we're going to flip the drum over. Now we've got the front side of the drum. Now in a bass drum, we want to put some dampening inside it to stop it from ringing on. And in this case, we've got a pillow. An average pillow will do. You can use some foam. There's some products on the market that you can use specifically for this to touch either end of the drum head, essentially to dampen it and stop it from ringing on. So we're going to grab our front bass drum head. This time it's got the one with the logo on it. It's the black one. Again, what I like to do is line that logo head up so the top of that logo is parallel to the block of the bass drum block. Got our second hoop, just like what we did before. Got that joint in the covering on the bottom of the hoop, and I like to line that up, like I said before, directly in line with one of the lugs. Okay, so same process now. We've got our hoop in place, held down now with the claw and the rod bolt that goes through that, just like what we did before. We're going to secure all of those down again, just finger tight. Okay, after assembly, you'll notice we've now got a spare washer, a couple of rod bolts and an insert. They are literally spares. You can keep those guys aside. Alright, so now we have our 5 drums assembled. Our 2 toms, a snare drum, our bass drum. In some cases, like I said prior, you may have a junior drum set which is a 3-piece or a 4-piece, so there may be some drums that you don't have. Everything follows the same procedure, however. Okay, it's time to move on to so we're going to begin with our snare drum stand. Okay, let's take that out of the plastic. Now, all of the stands will have the similar principle. We're going to open the tripod base up. You don't need to extend the width of the stands in any means. Look, generally, 20 to 30 centimeters with the snare drum stand is going to be fine. Okay, so now we're going to take the top section of the snare drum stand out, or the basket in this case as it's called. Now your angle adjustment here, we've got a wing bolt on the side which will allow you to secure that and adjust your angle. A lot of the times people have it flat, maybe angled a little bit towards you, and then at that height tier adjustment you can lock that one in place. We can open our basket up, and just below the basket we've got a winder there that will allow you to open and close the width, which is ultimately going to support the snare drum. In some cases your stand may differ to this a little bit, where it might just sit on there and you may not actually have an option to secure the basket up like so. Again, it all works in a similar principle. So that winder will allow the basket to come up and hold the drum in place. Alright, let's move on. We're going to start now with our cymbal stand. So we have a tripod base again. Doesn't really matter how wide you open this one up again. In this case it's a little bit broader. So at that height adjustment point, we're going to put in our second tier. Lock that up in place with our wing nut on the side. And then we put the cymbal tilter in place. In this case, again, you've got an angle adjustment which you can choose to angle the cymbal flatter or a little bit more towards yourself, and just secure that in place with the wing bolt on the side. Cool, let's move that one out of the way. Okay, now we're going to move on to our tom arms. In this case, same thing, we're able to angle those from the wing bolt on the side. Generally you're going to have those on a little bit of an angle, maybe 15 to 20 degrees. In some cases with a younger child you might choose to angle those a little bit steeper so the kids can reach them a little easier. Again, just that wing bolt on the side will allow you to angle those. We'll keep that aside for now. We're going to move on to our hi-hat stand. Similar principle, we'll open up our tripod base and we'll lock that wing bolt in place. In this case we have what's called a radius rod, and that's going to secure into the 2 holes on the outer side of the base, which will lock in place. You just squeeze those together and that'll clip into the 2 holes, as you can see here. In this situation we have some spikes on the hi-hat stand. They're great in a carpet environment where you're able to just have them protrude through and just allow the hi-hat stand to sit in place generally. Otherwise your stand again may not have these. Not a concern if it doesn't. Don't recommend you have them protruding if you're on a wooden floor, because it will mark the floor. Okay, so we're going to lock up our tripod with the wing bolt. Now we're going to begin with the top section of the hi-hat stand. Let's take the rod out of that top section. What you're going to notice here, we're going to take the clutch off. Inside here we've got a thread on our hi-hat rod, and that's going to actually go straight to the inside thread, which you'll see right now. We're going to screw that one straight into the inner rod. Just doing that clockwise, like all threads will do. We're going to do it up clockwise. Okay, so we've got our upper rod screwed into the lower section of the rod, and then our top section with a hi-hat seat. We've got a felt here and a washer underneath. That's going to slide straight over the top of the rod. Lock that in place. Again, depending on the height of the child or the player in general, you may choose to have that extruding from 20 to 30 centimeters. We're going to sit our hi-hat clutch over the top, and again, just going to lock that up for now. Okay, so now we're going to start with our bass drum pedal. Let's take this one out of the plastic. There's a variety of pedals on the market. In this case, we're going to show you a few different options. We're going to take the bass drum beater out of the plastic. This one's a multi-sided beater. Yours might just be a general round foam beater. They all work exactly the same principle. This pedal specifically has multiple Allen keys, which allows you to adjust the bearing location in the side of the pedal. Not that that's really a requirement by any means. So we're going to start, we're going to undo with our drum key, the locator to put our bass drum beater in the pedal. So we're going to use the felt side. In this case it's a 4-sided beater. Some of the plastic sides allow for a bit more attack in a live environment. We're just going to use the general rounded felt, or otherwise you could use the felt with the square head. Going to use our drum key to lock that in place. Now the way that this one works, we're going to start with our spring tension adjustment. You can use the top screw to undo and then tension it up from the bottom to give you a little bit more spring action out of the pedal. On the side of the pedal in this situation, we're able to change the beater angle. Again, your drum set may not have this, but in a situation where you're playing faster stuff, you may choose to have the pedal or the beater angle closer to the drum. Again, generally on about a sort of a 45-degree angle is generally fine. We'll show you a few different options later when we get onto putting our bass drum pedal on the drum. So now we're going to start with our stool. We've opened the tripod base, we're going to lock that T-bolt in place. Now in this situation we have a pole that goes straight in the top. Again, we're going to move that coach bolt out and undo that wing nut, and what this will allow us to do, lock that one in place in that little square slot, as you can see here. Depending on the height of the player, you may choose to remove that bolt and put that in an appropriate height hole to suit a taller player by moving it 1 or 2 threads down. We'll talk about that in a second. Got a seat top that's going to sit straight on top, and we have again a T-bolt that's going to sit straight in here. We've got a little groove on that upper rod, and that's going to secure in place there. So as I was mentioning a moment ago, for an adult player, you may choose to remove that coach bolt and put that in a lower section to allow the stool to be higher. Put that in one of the holes 2 or 3 spots down. Same principle, coach bolt locator is going to go straight through. Put a washer on the other side and then a wing bolt to lock that in place. Okay, now we're going to move on to our snare drum. Again, this is the snare drum with the wire. We're going to begin to tune the snare drum. In this situation, what we're going to start to do is tune the drum in opposites. We're going to have some links come up later on, so that'll help you more in depth with how to do this. Tuning in opposites, and you tap ultimately to find the same sound between each. What happens when you tune one side, it affects the other side. So you're going to go around the drum and ultimately have the same sound, as you can hear. Okay, nice tight bottom. On the snare drum top, not so tight. Okay, once we have a tight bottom head on the snare drum, the depth control can happen from the top. Let's get those nice and even. Sounding good. Okay, let's put that on now. Here we have the snare drum mechanism. When you pull the lever off, it drops the wire away from the drum. Flick it up, and what you'll notice, you've got an adjustment point on the top, which is a little rotary spin there. Okay, we want to get that snare drum working so the wire, you can only hear just the wire and no hanging note behind it afterwards. Okay, by spinning the mechanism anti-clockwise, it's going to loosen it, vice versa. Okay, so now our wire is responding the way that we want. We're going to sit that one on the basket, lock that one in place, keep that aside. So let's tune the kit. Okay. The bottom drum head really affects ultimately what the drum will do. So in this case, again, we're tuning in opposites. This case is a 10-inch tom. Your drum set might be a slightly different configuration with 12, 13-inch and 16-inch toms, or in a junior kit, smaller drums again. Again, same principle applies. So tuning in opposites, ultimately getting the same sound. And what's going to happen with tuning a drum set, the bottom heads need to ultimately be slightly higher than what the top skins will be, but we'll again give you some links with those guys. By having a slightly tighter bottom head, it'll allow the drum to hold a sustained note. If your drum does drop in pitch by going bow, generally you will notice that's due to the bottom skin. Okay, in this case we're pretty happy. We're going to start with our bottom skin. Same principle as changing a car tyre. Opposite tension, and one will affect the other. Again, you may choose to pause or fast forward at this stage anytime. Okay, let's move over to our top head.
Yep.
Okay, so let's begin with our floor tom. Again, I'm going to start with our bottom head. In this case, you might not go as higher pitched on the bottom skin. A lot of the time, players are going to want a lower pitch sound with a floor tom. Tuning in opposites. Again, the same principle applies. If the bottom skin is too loose, the drum will drop in pitch and bend and go bow. Get that nice and even, tuning that up in opposites. Okay, pretty good. Let's flip it over. In this situation, we want a nice deep floor tom tone, so we're going to just get that beyond the wrinkle stage. A couple of turns on each rod bolt, evening everything up. Let's check it, doing it in opposites again. Sound like a drum should sound. Okay, so now we're going to turn that one over and we're going to start and fit our floor tom legs. Okay, so we're going to get our floor tom legs out. Let's take those out of the plastic. We've got 3 legs here. They're going to go straight through the block on the side of the drum. In this case, we have an 8mm wing bolt to secure that in place. You might have a bolt that directly goes into the side, or the same principle again with the junior kit, or in some situations your 3-piece drum set may not have this floor tom, so disregard this process. I like to put that one through so we've got the leg exposed about 20 to 30 centimeters to keep that drum ultimately off the floor, about sort of 10 centimeters hanging through, protruding through the block. Again, that all depends on the height of the drum ultimately with the age of the player. So you can use one side here to loosen, to angle the drum ultimately in towards the player and lock that one into place. Okay, so now we're going to do a run over our bass drum. So in this case, to get it nice and low, we're going to get it just past that wrinkle stage. A couple of turns on each point, again tuning opposites. Tapping the skin will give you an indication that everything's nice and even. not too much tension here. We want this one nice and low in pitch. Tuning in opposites. Come to the other side. Yep, everything's sounding nice and even. Let's flip it over to the playing side. Again, the same principle here. Couple of turns because we had it just at that finger tight stage. Okay, get that one up. I'm going to start touching the head and hearing that it's nice and low and big and boomy. But that pillow inside the drum from before is going to allow it to be a sharp muted boom. Okay, we're ready to rock. Okay, we're going to begin with our bass drum spurs. In this case, we have an angled spur. You can lock that one off in place, generally angled a little bit towards the front of the drum. In some situations, your legs may just go straight into the front. We're going to drop that leg down a little bit, about 10 centimeters. We've got a spike in this situation. Your kit may or may not have this, but we can roll the rubber down and secure that with a lock nut behind. If you're playing on a wooden surface, so it doesn't scratch the floor. However, in a carpeted environment, it is an advantage to have that spike out so the drum doesn't slide forward. Again, as you can see, we've got it on approximately sort of a 10-degree angle here, leaning towards the front of the drum. Again, your spurs may be fixed. What I like to do is angle the drum and get it at the height where we've got about 1 to 2 centimeters of clearance under the front of the drum to allow that to be supported just on the spurs. Lock that in place again. Okay, so we're going to put our bass drum in place. We've got our floor tom slightly to the right if you are sitting behind the drum set, or on the left if you're looking at it from the front. And our snare drum's going to go to the right. This is a right-handed drum set configuration. Now we've got our adjustment here that we can see from the wing nut for our snare drum height. A younger player might want that at the lowest position. An adult will generally have it sort of level towards the top of the bass drum hoop. We're going to begin with putting our tom arms in place. In this case, we've got a memory lock which is already on the arm, and we'll slot straight into the little groove there to lock that in place. We're going to start with our second tom arm. In this case, both the wing nuts are facing outwards. Not that that's a problem if yours may not be doing so, but it allows for an easy adjustment if you need to swap them around so you can get those toms in a little bit closer together. Again, our memory lock's gone into place, which we'll talk about later. Now we're going to slide the arm straight onto the drum. Exactly the same principle. In this case, we've got an isolated mount so the drum arm doesn't protrude into the drum. Memory lock's in place. Doing it up the top of the drum now. Okay, now we're going to put our second tom in place, and again our memory lock's secured and they will slot into the little groove on the top of the block. Lower section here. We're going to angle our tom to suit the player. You might choose to angle a little bit steeper for a younger player. Slide our memory lock down into place. The little groove will slot into the block of the drum. Okay, as you can see here with the memory lock, we've got a little piece that extends and that'll lock straight into the drum, and that's the same at the top at the arm where it reaches the block. The little nipple will reach into the block and secure that in place, and that's really an advantage later on. If you choose to move the drum set around and put it back in, it'll lock back into that same height and same angle and placement every time. So we're going to put our cymbal stand in place, set that to an angle and a right height that's sort of suitable again for the player. We're going to begin with our cymbals now. Let's begin with our hi-hat. So we take the clutch off, we have our felt, we're going to put one of our two hi-hats straight on top of that rod, sitting directly on top of that felt. And it's going to be inverted, and the two hi-hats are going to meet together. So now we're going to start with our clutch. Going to remove the nylon locking piece off the bottom. Again, we have two felts here, so we're going to put one felt on one side of the cymbal. On the other side of the cymbal now we're going to put the second felt. We're going to use that nylon locking nut to secure those two in place. Let's lock that up at the bottom. Now you have an adjustment from the top. We want a little bit of movement in that cymbal. Going to secure those two down. Beautiful. Just a little bit of movement there. Sit that one straight on top of the hi-hat rod. Now for hi-hats, what we need to do here, you may choose to push your foot down on the rod, and again this is going to allow the rod to go up and down. Once we push that down a little bit, we can lock that up with a wing nut on the side of the clutch, and that'll allow the two cymbals to part once it's locked in place. Again, once it's undone, you may choose to just simply push the rod down and lock that in place. Okay, now we're going to put our crash cymbal in place. Let's undo the top wing nut. Same principle as the hi-hats. Okay, so we're taking our top felt and washer off. Put the cymbal in place. One felt washer underneath, one felt on top. Then we put our washer on top, and then we secure that down with our wing bolts or wing nut. Want a little bit of movement in that cymbal there. If it's done up too tight, the cymbal can't move and you're going to dent the cymbal. Have that nice and free. Okay, let's begin with putting our bass drum pedal on the drum. In this case, what's going to happen, we're going to have the hoop go between the tongue and the base of the pedal. In some situations you'll have a T-bolt directly underneath. In this situation with our drum set today, it's the same principle. The hoop's going to go between the tongue and the bass, and we have a wing bolt on the side of the pedal which will allow that to secure to the bass drum hoop. As you'll see here, I'm going to slide that straight on. We have a wing bolt directly underneath the footboard, and lock that up nice and tight. We're ready to play. So now we're going to demonstrate it with the pedal that comes with this drum set. In this case, the same principle, like we said, we've got a wing bolt on the side now which will secure the tongue onto the hoop. Slide them to between the tongue and the base of the pedal, lock that up on the side, beautiful, ready to play. Congratulations, you've set up your first drum set. Please don't hesitate to call the store on 03 9720 4581 or email the store. We're always happy to help.